Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today I'll talk about my thoughts on Path of Exile's 3.28 Mirage League. And this one came with an Atlas rework, new league mechanic, ground loot changes, and also server stability improvements for Europe. Okay, actually, the first three though. But let's start off with the ground loot changes because those were felt from the very beginning, just like the servers were, but whatever. And yeah, the chance orbs, they were dropping everywhere. Orb of Alchemies, people started dropping Exalted Orbs in the campaign and were freaking out. At that point, we didn't understand how common Exalts would be just yet. And honestly, I'm here for it. I said this for PoE2 as well. Exalted Orbs are fun. I want to use them as much as possible, and being able to even use them during campaign and not feel bad about it is pretty fun. They also removed Harbingers and added Fracturing and Ancient Orbs into the main drop pool, which I feel like really filled out the mid-tier currency section. They did put down Exalted Orbs into like the Chaos section, so we have another one there in like GCP, Chaos Orb, Exalted Orb, so that's nice. But then we have Ancient Orb and also Fracturing Orbs in kind of like the mid-tier, and to kind of round it out, and I'm here for it. The more ground loot, the better. The more randomness and sort of mystery drops, the better. So campaign for me was great, but did it hold up into endgame? Because they did say 100% more currency on a lot of the currencies other than, for example, Mirage, Kalandra, and whatnot. Did it actually feel like that in endgame? And I gotta say yes, for one reason. I've been boss rushing a lot. I just enjoy boss rushing. I enjoy these Alcan Go strats, and the amount of random divines and random fracturing orbs I'm dropping are pretty crazy. There is a few changes though that people have not really adjusted to. I see people boss rushing and Alcan going without slamming their maps beforehand, and that's just not correct anymore. Quantity now even matters on maps that you might not think it matters on, but you're gonna drop random stuff and it's going to make up for it. And this is maybe where some people felt like it wasn't really there. Now, I will say that I would love this change also for divination cards, because they have been falling a little bit behind on that front and they have been kind of getting less and less relevant. I don't like all the div cards coming from like stack decks. Then we've had exceptional gems, which in total I liked. I like what they're trying to go for. They're going for a more PoE2 style with lineage support gems, make it a little bit more distinct. But I was missing the Awakened Gems, I will say. And Awakened Gems getting removed also had some kind of weird effect on some archetypes. For example, dot builds in particular, Poison and Ignite, were using 4 to 5 Awakened Gems that all were multipliers on top of multipliers, which on some of my old builds, I saw 30% less damage just from losing those. And then we've also just had Awakened Cast on Crit completely removed from the game. And some people say, oh, cooldown recovery support. It's like, yeah, but that's -1 support gem, right? That's like, I don't know, 30% less damage. Sure, I can also just slap on 17 Hypnotic Eye Jewels with 3% CDR, and it's also solved. You can solve it, but it's just at what cost? Same goes for single elemental builds who've had their Awakened Penetration stripped away. Normal pen is just pretty bad, and now if you're single element, you're almost worse off than Trially with Trinity, which feels worse. It feels like you've earned being one element or converting to one element, and then you don't really get a payoff anymore. So you lose the exposure and you lose the extra pen. So I wish GGG had compensated for that a little bit in advance, but we're probably going to see that next league and there so on. But I would love if some of the Awakened Gems could maybe come back in some form. Then we've had the Atlas rework, which sees them cutting the Atlas into these 4 regions, making it a little bit more physical, making it an actual physical place, which overall I like. There's definitely problems in the UI here. For example, why are these directional? I'm not really sure, but overall, pretty cool system. I will say the best thing I like about the new Atlas, though, is the inclusions of what is basically PoE2 Waystones, meaning you can now just select whatever map you want and put it in, and it's just a tier 16 map. Done. That's all you need. You don't need a city square map anymore. And funnily enough, thought about this a lot. This system works better in PoE1 than it does in PoE2. So I'm really happy they ported it over, because it just lends itself to a game where you can actually pick and choose your layout, where you actually have agency. Being able to farm up 8 mod maps and then being able to slot them in wherever you want, instead of having to, I don't know, let's say you farm something in Strand and then you buy 50 strands or make 50 strands, and then you farm a different strand. Oh, now I need city squares. It was very annoying, and this change is just, yeah, one of the all-time best. And it's great on Conqueror maps as well. I can just pick and choose whatever I want on them now. Same with Elder, and it does not make it like too easy or anything like that. It's just buttery smooth. The progression felt good to me. There was a fog of war. There was a little bit of a mystique behind it, not really knowing where stuff is, which I'm not 100% sure if I like yet. I'm just not really used to it. But for example, I wanted to get my Pantheon for freeze immune, and if I hadn't had, I don't know, people in chat tell me where Underground Sea is, I would have probably had to go around and find it myself and maybe go into the wrong directions. So that might have been annoying. It would maybe be cool to have a chance to at least know in which quadrant it is. But other than that, pretty good. Also, stuff like Seething Chime or Polaric Void quest stuff should be a little bit more obvious. I had this situation where I went through the Atlas and I did not see them, and I was kind of like, where are they now? But a lot of these problems are just because it's a new system and because I didn't know what was going on. I think these look a little bit goofy, a little bit thrown around, like A-Bomb is here, Ziggurat is here, all right, fine. Sanctuary is here, Valdos, Oblate. I'm not really sure what they were trying to go for. I think this is just kind of like cobbled together and will probably be reworked. But yeah, other than that, I don't have really anything else to say in terms of Atlas in general. There's a lot of small bugs, which I do not like. This definitely has to be improved upon. But overall, I like that they want to make it a little bit more regional, akin to old, I don't know, what were they called? Watchstones, I think. And this physicality to maps having an actual region and being able to be changed from league to league makes everything a little bit fresher and also gives them more opportunities. They can, for example, introduce something that only affects one quadrant and play around with that. They also introduced astrolabes, which is already something you can play with regional. And so you put it here, for example, and then it reveals an area. And whenever you complete one of these maps afterwards, it will grant you a buff for the rest of the maps. So this one's pretty cool. It has a cute element where at the end you get a vault with a special reward once you complete the astrolabe. So there's always this dynamic between, do I just want to boss rush and get to the reward as fast as possible, or do I want to make the most out of these astrolabe rewards? But, and this is probably my biggest problem with astrolabes, is the balancing right now. They are not made equal. Some of them are ridiculously stronger than others. If you look at the mod pool, it's kind of goofy, but this is something that they can easily figure out and just buff some of the less used ones. And it's a harsh thing to do because it's always going to be tied to how strong the mechanic is in general. So if a mechanic just sucks, the astrolabe will probably not help all that much. But overall, I don't mind the introduction of astrolabes, and I really do like that they beforehand already introduced this keystone, knowing that some people do not want to run different map regions. Then let's talk about the league mechanic itself, Mirage. And this is, I gotta say, GGG at their best. This is a simple mechanic that has a lot of influence on old mechanics, plays into the strengths, and has new drops that are exciting and introduces a lot of new ways to gear. It is a mechanic that you always want to engage with, but it doesn't put walls into your map, forcing you to interact with it. It's just there and you're seeking it out because it's so fun and so good. So for example, it influences harvest to give you different crops that have new crafts. It gives you a new timeless emblem from expeditions. It gives you volatile Val Orb, Deli Fogs, which especially volatile Val Orbs I want to hone in on a little bit. This has been another idea ported over from PoE 1 where corruptions can actually increase or decrease values on items up to 22% more and 22% down, and it actually rounds up. So super interesting, and one of those things that I really, really hope will stay in the game. And I would be highly surprised, even if Mirage will not stay in its current form, if we're not going to see volatile Val Orb stay. It even opened up new archetypes. It made the 5 Flask Mage Blood a lot of cool items, something like Void Forge that I use, Stampede. Just a great addition. Same with the Delirium Fog, which makes it so you can change the implicit of a cluster jewel. This makes it so you can have different notables from different clusters and just shuffle them around. Kind of make your own Megalomaniac, sort of. Pretty clever orb that, yeah, has some cool use cases. Triple explodey clusters, double attack speed clusters, or as we saw with the minion packed builds, minion life clusters with other relevant stats. Just a pleasure to play with. And then at the end, we have something I found okay. There's gem imbues, so you can now technically have a 7th link. Cool. So for some skills, you can now just put life tab on it without losing a slot. Out of all the new inclusions, this is probably the one I could like take it or leave it, but it's a decent addition. Overall though, with Mirage as a package, I gotta say, the thing I'm worried about the most is how can they actually introduce this into the base game? And I don't really have an answer. I don't think they can in its current form. This is not a mechanic you can just put on the passive tree, Because if they did, they would have to nerf it in some way. They would have to completely take everything that makes it good, and I don't want that to happen. I think the only way to introduce it would be something akin to Wildwood Wisps, where it comes up sometimes, so you can't really plan for it, but when it happens and you're juicing, you're getting a full Mirage map. You're not just getting a region, you're actually getting a full Mirage map, and you're super hyped whenever it happens. Now, could that lead to some kind of Mirage fishing? Maybe, but I just cannot see how they actually put this onto the passive tree and it not being completely broken for the rest of existence. What I hope they will do, though, is pull out all the cool items, like the new Timeless Jewel, the Volatile Val Orb, the Delirium Fog, and revitalize some of those old League mechanics, put it into the main drop pool. Beyond, not the coolest mechanic right now, more used for I don't know, the mob count than anything else, right? Like Tainted Fusing Orbs are worth a little bit in the first few days, and then it's like, whatever. Put the Volatile Val Orb in that drop pool. Deli Fog could be used to revitalize Simulacrum drops or something like that. Maybe put coins somewhere, I'm not really sure, but you get the gist. The Timeless Jewels could revitalize logbooks, which a lot of people don't do. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff here just for the base game in general. And I think that Mirage is just GGG putting out a very solid league that could impact the game for years to come, even if the mechanic itself does not stay center focused. Now, from a whole builds perspective, the game definitely got a lot easier, but I don't know if that's really a detriment. There is still stuff to do that is quite hard. Super Juiced Breach, you have to build for it, which is a good thing, right? You have to build into Explodies or high clear speed, and Vroon as a boss is still not a complete pushover. So there's that. There's also Expedition, which is extremely rippy and needs specific builds. I feel like the game went more from you need a mirror tier, like destruction machine, I don't know, with like insane gear, to very specialized pockets again. And I kind of like it. And the amount of people who told me that every league mechanic is viable, basically, everything's 20 div an hour plus, everybody, the best leagues are always the ones where everybody thinks their build is OP and everybody thinks their farming strat is OP. Then you know people are hyped, you know people are engaged, and people are actually thinking about their choices. Overall, I love that tier 17s have been relegated and are not in the center front anymore. We have Mirage maps, we have 16.5 maps. If Mirage maps are gone, I will want to see what they're gonna do with that, if it's just going to be 16.5s or if they're gonna throw something new in every league. But even for people who don't like the hardest content getting removed, because the top end definitely is now easier, I personally did not feel that as a downside. I felt like I had a little bit more freedom in what I'm able to build, and it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I can make a skill work, even if it's not the best numerically. I'm not kind of a slave to 5 to 6 skills, and that felt good. There's obviously still problems with build variety in terms of like stackers. It feels like you're kind of honed into some of these things, but even that didn't feel as bad because the top end is not as hard that it would require me to go strength or in stacker. But this is one I want to see what happens to in the next coming leagues. Right now, all I can say is I really enjoyed every build I played, and I enjoyed every strat I tried. So that's kind of all that counts for me right now. And at the end, we have to talk about server stability, especially if you're from EU. And I gotta say, I'm not really familiar with the ins and outs of servers, of how all of these structures work. But for me personally, that's all I can tell you, is this was the worst league in terms of server stability ever. Like, not even close. We're now in week 4, and it has gotten better, obviously. But the first 2 weeks went absolute shit show for me, especially first week. I've had days that if the hype didn't carry me, if the league wasn't this good, I would have just like, I don't even know. Like, the fact that I still love this league that much is just makes me even more mad that the server stability had to be this bad. Exactly this league. Definitely bad. I know some people who just had to outright quit the league even though they loved it. So that's just a bummer. I know GG said they were DDoSed, but it's like, obviously from a perspective of a consumer, it's still very, very annoying. Overall, though, this is in my top 3 leagues of all time. It would have probably been number 1 if it wasn't for server stability issues. Usually I try to not rate them because they're not technically the game's fault or anybody's fault, but they just, they do affect the fun I had. So that was an issue, but otherwise, what a great league. And when it comes to Mirage, especially, the impact that will be felt on the game with all these new currencies that it introduced, even if Mirage itself will not stay in the game or will only play a very small part in the game, everything that was created from it will impact the game positively for a long time. And I had this feeling even leading up to this league, and I got a little bit of flack from some people saying I was overly positive, Palsteron, right? Before the league even started and calling it a golden era. That's just how I felt watching the interviews before the league. And now seeing the league unfold, I gotta say, I'm very happy with what we got. This is kind of like a new starting point for a lot of things, for the Atlas rework, for what they want to do with Endgame. They removed tier 17s, which left a little bit of a hole. I would say that they can fill out over the coming leagues. I hope they will fill it with something that isn't a PoE2 layout fest, like, I don't know, Fortress, A-Bomb, and whatnot. I would love for the hardest content in the game to actually be really fun. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed the league. Really enjoyed all the builds I played. Enjoyed all the strats I played. I don't know where the game will go from here or not, but I'm really, really stoked and very positively skewed. And yeah, that's about all I got. Banger league. Also, check out the new podcast we made with Dreamcore. It's posted on his channel. I will link to the playlist down below in the description. We've had Gorafa, Milky, Zizaran, and Jungron on the podcast in the first 4. Just so you know, we're also going to do the same thing for PoE2. So it's going to be 4 each, then 4 for PoE2, always 1 week before the league starts, and then 3 after. It's called the PoE Report. Just check it out. I've had a lot of fun doing podcasts in general, and we'll try to do it moving forward. And yeah, what more can I say? Lovely league. Because I still don't have a slogan. See you next time.